The CIA is constantly pushing the envelope of legality, and they just wait for somebody to push back. And the reason why the Russians haven't agreed to substantive talks brokered by Donald Trump is that they're winning, so that it is now legal for the American government to propagandize the American people. Every one of them has seen something, some ship. Sometimes they're coming out of the water. That I probably shouldn't comment on.
How do you view the war and NATO's role in perhaps poking the bear? Um, how do you view this situation and how the war came about?
I believe the war really originated in 2014, not in 2022. The United States had repeatedly promised the Russians that NATO would not expand to Russia's borders. And then we did exactly that. We expanded right up to Russia's borders. And we promised the Russians repeatedly that Ukraine would not become a part of NATO. And then we announced that we were going to start talks with Ukraine to become a part of NATO. So we lied repeatedly to the Russians. The Russians twice asked to join NATO themselves. And twice, under President Bill Clinton and under President Barack Obama, we told the Russians that was not going to happen. Can you imagine how different the world would be today if the
Hmm.
Russians were a part of NATO? Well, in 2014, we deposed a prime minister, a democratically elected prime minister of Ukraine who happened to be pro-Russian. And we replaced him with a pro-American, pro-Western prime minister. The Russians saw this as a direct challenge, and so they snatched Crimea. For their own protection, they snatched Crimea. And then elected and said that he wanted to not only uh, begin accession talks for Ukraine to become a member of the European Union, he announced publicly that he wanted to join NATO. And the Russians had had enough. And the reason why this thing is still dragging on, the reason why the Russians haven't agreed to substantive talks brokered by Donald Trump, is that they're winning. And there's no reason for them to engage in talks because they're winning. The bottom line is that Ukraine at the end of this is going to be a rump state. It might even be a landlocked state, and it will never be in NATO. But the Russians are trying to put as much hurt on the Ukrainians as they possibly can. And there's nothing that the United States or NATO can do to stop them.
So why do you think it almost seems as if NATO and the United States and these Western countries wanted to cause a conflict, such as the conflict that's now occurring? Why is it in their interest to have this conflict going on at the moment?
Because a weak Russia is always in the national interests of the Western countries, just like a bankrupt China would be in the national interest of, the United States and the Western countries. Because if you keep Russia weak, that makes the European Union and NATO and the United States strong. It really is that simple.
And do you view, I mean, in the UK, the media is incredibly biased, the mainstream media. Do you think that Russia are as much of a threat as the media makes out, or a threat at all to the West?
Yeah, I don't have rose-colored glasses. Um, I think that, sure, the Russians are going to be a threat. Yes, the Russians kill their political opponents, whether domestically or overseas. We've seen that play out in the UK. We've seen it play out all across Russia. But at the same time, I don't believe that the Russians are an existential threat to the West. I really don't. I think that Russia has been very badly mishandled by especially the US and the UK. And we have missed several opportunities to bring Russia into the Western fold. And now Russia will never be in the Western fold. We're going to be in a state of war with Russia for a very long time, even if it's not a hot war, even if it's another Cold War, which is a shame because I think that when the Soviet Union fell apart, we really did have an opportunity to change the global landscape, and we just let it go.